Movie adaptations are nothing new. Ever since the dawn of cinema, books, plays, fairy tales, and pretty much any other story you can think of has been adapted into a visual medium, and usually more than once at that. However, what pretty much anybody with even the most basic knowledge of storytelling will tell you is that, adaptation or not, it's always important to have some kind of story to tell. Even if that's just following random characters around through their daily lives, there has to be a clear reason why the story is being told. And sometimes in adapting certain works, the writer evidently seems to forget this little fact, causing them to lose the entire point of what the book was about in the first place, and leave the story so fractured that only those who've actually read the source material will have any idea of what's going on. And today, I'd like to explore a few movies that made this exact mistake in order to properly demonstrate how not to do an adaptation. Now, there will be spoilers ahead for any movie or book that's brought up in this video, so in case you don't want to know anything that happens about anything I mention, you might just want to keep your guard up. This is the only warning I'll be giving you. Okay, so to get right into it, one of the best examples I can give of a movie that lost its story in trying to adapt a book is Practical Magic. Adapted from a rather intricate story about the generations of a family of witches, the film is about two sisters, played by Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, that are secretly witches who have to cope with a family curse that kills any man any woman in the family falls in love with. Or at least, that's the best plot description I can give for it anyway. Because the problem here is that the book actually tells an interesting, well thought out story that spans multiple decades. The movie, by contrast, focuses almost solely on Bullock and Kidman's generation, and on top of that, the writers change almost every aspect of the book. For example, a major plot point in the movie is that Kidman's boyfriend Jeremy ends up dead, and the two sisters are terrified that they're going to go to jail for murder. In the book, he dies of an overdose, and the two are never even suspected of murder, let alone afraid to go to jail. Now, at first glance, a change like this doesn't sound like it should be a problem, but where the issue comes in is with how the writers handle this change. Because instead of committing themselves to this plot point, the movie jumps around all over the place and frequently feels as if it's honestly about nothing. For example, the beginning of the movie introduces the audience to the origins of the family curse, setting up a problem for the characters. Then Bullock gets married, her husband dies from the curse, and everybody kind of just sits around after that. Nothing really notable happens except for a creepy scene of incest innuendos. Then a little while later, Jeremy goes crazy and then kicks the bucket, forcing them to hide him while a determined cop is on their trail and hounding them. Then things kind of just slow down again and the plot doesn't really go anywhere. Then Kidman ends up possessed by Jeremy for reasons that are never explained, and them saving her solves all their problems. The curse, the cop, everything. To put it simply, this movie suffers from literally losing the story multiple times. Things just happen, and when the writers don't have anywhere else for it to go, things just dangle around for a bit before something else is introduced to get the plot going again, even if it has nothing to do with what previously happened. Characters make strange decisions without explanation, and in the end, the writers have to find a way to converge three wildly different problems into one solution so that they can have something resembling an ending. Basically, The problem here is that the writers borrow from the book as they please, but want to tell their own story, resulting in a disjointed mess. For example, the theme of the movie clearly wants to be about the bond of sisters, but the writers also include the family curse from the book. And the two aren't combined together all that well except for the beginning and end, to the point that both these elements are dropped and forgotten about at random points because they want to focus on something else. And then there's something like Jeremy's ghost haunting Gilliam. The thing is, the movie never even bothers to explain what on earth's going on with that beyond he wants her. So, as such, his suddenly trying to possess and kill people really just comes out of nowhere unless you've read the book, where the whole thing is explained in much better detail. And to demonstrate my point here, take the scene where the ghost attacks the cop. He goes to grab him, but his sheriff's badge burns his hand. Upon seeing this, he holds the badge up to him, which forces Jeremy into temporary retreat. Now, while making for a pretty epic moment, I will admit, unless the audience has read the book, they'll be left at a complete loss for why that happened. In the movie, the best that can be inferred is that it repelled the ghost because he believed in the goodness of what it represented, based off something he says in an earlier scene. But again, there's absolutely no confirmation on that given to the viewer, leaving them to wonder why that of all things was so effective against him. And as a writer myself, I can tell you that not only is this not how you do an adaptation, but even just tell a story, period. The amount of time the characters just sit around with nothing of importance happening quickly gets rather tedious to the audience. And what makes it even worse is that these scenes don't really add anything of value to the movie or characters. In all honesty, those scenes were most likely included either because the writers wanted the movie to be longer, or because they were awkwardly trying to include different scenes and interactions from the book and didn't do a very good job at it. As I said before, on its own the movie barely makes any sense, and majorly suffers from not only pacing issues, but focusing way too much on certain elements and not enough on the ones they probably should have, leading to a very confusing and disjointed film. Again, the only way to even halfway get what's going on is if you go back and read the book after the fact, and even then, that'll only clear up some of the more confusing elements. And to briefly bring up another example of that, another movie that suffers from the original book basically being required reading if you want to fully understand it is the Best Picture winning Midnight Cowboy. Now listen, say that it's a great movie all you want to, but they removed so much context from the book that it's almost impossible to figure out what on earth is going on beyond the fact that Jon Voight makes for a good person but a bad prostitute. Seriously, I speak from experience when I say even just a summary of the book makes the movie so much easier to understand. And as a result, the movie has gone on to be, shall we say, one of my least favorite Best Picture winners. But to get back to practical magic, I would say that if there's one lesson that can be learned from it, it would be to always make sure your story is going somewhere. Because this movie borrows elements from the book, but not the story. And with the writers making up one that doesn't gel so well with those borrowed elements, the entire narrative falls apart. Now listen, I'm not saying the movie is exactly incoherent. You can follow the gist of it the whole way through. But the way it's written does end up sparking a lot of, what exactly is this about? And why did that just happen / why did they just do that types of questions from the audience, which only by reading the book can some of those be answered. And I'm pretty sure almost anybody can agree that, with only a select few exceptions, that no writer should ever want the book their movie's based on to be required reading in order for the audience to understand it. An adaptation's job, first and foremost, should be to be able to stand on its own independently of the book. And that was something that Practical Magic not only didn't do, but messed up so badly that even reading the book can't help you to make total sense of everything that's ultimately presented. Okay, I think that's everything I've got on that. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you believe that Practical Magic is not only a bad adaptation, but one that completely loses its story in the process? Or do you believe that it's a great movie and that I don't know what I'm talking about? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, you don't have to agree with me just because you watched the video. You can absolutely love the movie and think I've got it all wrong if you want to. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it. And I hope to see you all next time.